You're in a relationship, she's still there, she still texts you, she still sees you. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. But deep down, something feels off. You don't feel respected anymore. Your opinions carry less weight. Your effort feels expected, not appreciated. And yet you keep telling yourself the same thing most men do. If she's still here, she must still value me. That belief is dangerous. Because here's the truth most men never hear until it's too late. A woman can stay with a man for a very long time without truly valuing him. Not out of love, out of comfort, convenience, attention. So the real question isn't whether she's still around. It's this. How do you know if you're genuinely valued or quietly being used? There are signs, clear ones, and most men ignore them until the damage is already done. This isn't a video about hating women, and it's definitely not about feeling sorry for yourself. It's about looking at the truth without excuses, especially the ones that keep you stuck. I'm going to walk you through 5 specific behaviors that reveal when a woman doesn't truly value you. Explained from a psychological perspective, most women never say out loud. If you've ever felt like you give more than you receive, hit like. And if you want deeper clarity about relationship dynamics, power, and self-respect, subscribe. Let's start with the hard truth most men avoid. Most men avoid this truth because it forces them to let go of a comforting illusion. Attention is not the same thing as respect. Presence is not the same thing as value. A woman can answer your messages, spend time with you, even stay in a relationship, and still not see you as a man she truly values. Men tend to think in logic. If she's here, she must care. But attraction and respect don't operate on logic. They operate on felt position. Women don't bond to effort. They bond to how a man shows up in his own life. The moment a man starts fearing her loss more than he values his own self-respect, the dynamic quietly shifts. He gives more. He explains more. He compromises faster. He tries harder to prove that he's worthy of staying chosen. And without realizing it, he teaches her something dangerous. His value is negotiable. That's when the balance tilts. This isn't about blaming her. And it's not about shaming you. It's about clarity. Because when you're honest with yourself, you'll see that most of these situations don't start with cruelty. They start with subtle permission. Small moments where you swallowed discomfort. Where you ignored disrespect because you didn't want conflict. Where you told yourself it wasn't a big deal. But dynamics don't correct themselves. They only deepen. If you're feeling undervalued now, it's not because you suddenly became less. It's because the structure of the relationship stopped requiring her to respect you. And nothing changes until that truth is faced without denial. That's the reality most men avoid. And it's where everything actually begins. Number 1. She talks down to you. This is where the loss of value usually shows up first. Not in what she does, but in how she speaks to you. The tone changes before the behavior does. She starts explaining things to you like you're slow. She adds sarcasm where there used to be warmth. She corrects you unnecessarily, sometimes in front of other people. And what stings most isn't the words themselves, it's the feeling underneath them. From a woman's perspective, this shift is revealing. When admiration fades, language becomes sharper. Respect leaves the room quietly, and condescension takes its place. She's no longer speaking with you. She's speaking over you. Picture this. You ask a simple question in a group setting. Nothing dramatic, nothing foolish. Instead of answering normally, she smirks, laughs lightly, and says something like, "You really don't get this stuff, do you?" Everyone chuckles. You smile along, but something tightens in your chest. That moment matters. Because a woman who values you would never use your ignorance, real or perceived, as entertainment. She would protect your dignity, not test how much of it you're willing to sacrifice to keep the peace. Psychologically, this is a signal. You're no longer seen as an equal. You're being repositioned. Not aggressively, not obviously, but clearly. And here's the part most men miss. When you let it slide, when you laugh it off, when you tell yourself you're being too sensitive, you're not keeping the relationship smooth. You're confirming her internal assessment. You're showing her that speaking down to you comes without consequence. That's how dynamics solidify. Women don't talk over men they still respect. They don't diminish men they still admire. When that tone appears, it's not playful. It's diagnostic. And once a man is no longer viewed as an equal, every other form of disrespect becomes easier. This is the crack where the foundation starts to shift, and most men don't notice until the structure is already unstable. Number 2. She flirts with other men in front of you. This is one of the most painful behaviors to witness because it hits a man where pride, trust, and instinct collide. And yet, it's also one of the most misunderstood. Men often explain this away. She's just friendly. That's her personality. I don't want to look insecure. But from a psychological standpoint, this behavior is rarely accidental. When a woman values you, she is naturally protective of the bond. Not out of obligation, but because your presence matters to her. She's aware of how her attention lands. She understands the signal it sends, and she avoids anything that would make you question where you stand. When that restraint disappears, something has already shifted. Watch the pattern closely. You're together at a gathering, a bar, a casual social setting. Another man enters the picture. Suddenly her energy lifts. Her voice softens. Her laughter becomes lighter. There's a glance held just a second too long. A playful touch that wasn't necessary. And all of this happens while you're standing right there. That's not thoughtless. That's information. At its core, this behavior serves 3 psychological functions. First, it feeds attention. She enjoys the validation. Second, it tests boundaries. She's observing how much you're willing to tolerate. And third, this is the part most men resist. It's a loss test. She's unconsciously asking, if I disrespect him like this, will he still stay? Now here's where the dynamic tightens. If you say something, you're told you're overreacting, that you're jealous, that you're insecure. The focus shifts away from her behavior and onto your reaction. And many men retreat at that point, not because they're weak, but because they don't want to lose her. But silence has a cost. When you absorb that moment without response, you communicate something far louder than words, that your boundaries are flexible when her approval is on the line. And once she learns that, the behavior doesn't disappear. It escalates. The truth is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Women do not flirt openly in front of men they believe could walk away. They do it when they feel safe. Safe that you won't challenge it, safe that you won't leave. And that sense of safety isn't love. It's leverage. If she truly valued you, the idea of making you feel replaceable would never even cross her mind. When it does, it's because she already believes you won't make her pay attention to what she's risking. Number 3. She only shows up when she needs something. This behavior is quieter than flirting or public disrespect, but over time, it does far more damage. At first, it doesn't look wrong. In fact, it can feel flattering. She reaches out when she's overwhelmed. She calls when she's stressed. She leans on you when life feels heavy. And because you care, you show up. You listen. You support. You give your time and emotional energy freely. But if you're honest with yourself, there's a pattern forming, one that becomes impossible to ignore once you see it. She's present when she needs comfort. She's absent when you need connection. The cycle repeats quietly. She disappears when things are good. Then something goes wrong in her life, and suddenly you're back in her world. Warmth returns. Interest resurfaces. Affection briefly reappears. And the moment she's stabilized again, she fades. This isn't partnership. It's extraction. A healthy partner shows up consistently, not selectively. Presence flows both ways. Emotional availability isn't activated only when it's convenient. But when a woman doesn't truly value a man, she doesn't invest. she taps into him. From a psychological standpoint, this dynamic turns a man into an emotional utility, not a priority, not a partner, a resource. Someone she can access when she's low, without any responsibility to give back when he needs support himself. And here's the part that wears men down over time. You begin to wait. You anticipate her moods. You stay emotionally available, just in case. The inconsistency drains you. You feel useful, but unseen. Needed, but not chosen. And slowly, your sense of direction erodes. You stop asking whether your needs are being met and start focusing on staying relevant enough to be remembered. That's the cost of conditional presence. A woman who values you doesn't only show up when her world is collapsing. She shows up when yours matters too. When that balance is gone, what remains isn't connection. It's dependency, disguised as affection. Number 4. She disrespects you publicly and calls it a joke. This is one of the most damaging behaviors because it doesn't just affect how she sees you. It reshapes how others see you too. It often hides behind humor. She interrupts you mid-sentence and finishes your thought for you. She mocks your opinion in front of friends. She turns a private flaw into a public punchline. And when people laugh, she laughs the loudest. If you bring it up later, she brushes it off. You're too sensitive. I was just kidding. Can't you take a joke? But here's the truth most men don't want to face. Humiliation disguised as humor is still humiliation. From a psychological perspective, public disrespect is never accidental. Women instinctively protect the image of the man they value. Even when they're upset, even when they disagree, they don't undermine him in front of others. Why? Because his standing reflects on them. When a woman is comfortable making you the joke, she's signaling something, to you and to everyone watching. She's communicating that your dignity is expendable, that lowering you elevates her, and that you won't challenge it. The most dangerous part isn't the comment itself. It's what happens when you stay silent. Your silence doesn't keep the peace. It trains the dynamic. Each time you laugh it off, the behavior becomes more acceptable, more frequent, more normalized. The room learns how to treat you by watching how you allow her to treat you. And slowly, without a single argument, your social frame collapses. This kind of disrespect erodes a man's presence. You feel it afterward, in the way people talk over you, in the subtle shift of how you're regarded. Not because they decided you were less, but because the woman closest to you showed them it was allowed. Love doesn't require an audience, and respect doesn't need to be loud. When a woman truly values you, she may challenge you in private, but she will never trade your dignity for a laugh. The moment she does, and the moment you tolerate it, the relationship stops being a partnership and starts becoming a performance where you're always the cost. Number 5. She constantly compares you to other men. This is one of the quietest forms of disrespect and also one of the most psychologically corrosive. She doesn't need to insult you directly. She doesn't need to raise her voice. All it takes is a comment placed just lightly enough to sound harmless. She mentions how another man handles things better. She points out how someone else is more driven, more confident, more successful. Sometimes it's an ex. Sometimes it's a friend's partner. Sometimes it's a man you've never even met. And every time, the message lands the same way. You are falling short. Here's where men often get confused. They assume she's trying to motivate them, that she's pushing them to grow. But real encouragement doesn't require comparison, and it certainly doesn't require making you feel smaller to make her point. Psychologically, constant comparison serves a different purpose. It creates insecurity, and insecurity is leverage. When a man starts measuring himself against other men in her eyes, he stops standing firmly in his own identity. He adjusts. He overcompensates. He tries to become what he thinks she wants instead of grounding himself in who he actually is. And that shift is subtle, but it's powerful. You begin to second-guess your path. You question whether your pace is enough. You wonder if you need to change who you are to keep her approval. That's not growth. That's erosion. A woman who truly values you doesn't need to hold other men up as benchmarks. She doesn't weaponize comparison to keep you chasing. She may challenge you, yes, but she does it by believing in your direction, not by constantly reminding you of someone else's. When comparison becomes a pattern, it's no longer about improvement. It's about control, keeping you slightly off balance, slightly unsure, slightly dependent on her validation. And the longer that dynamic continues, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You don't just feel undervalued, you feel replaceable. Not because you are, but because you've been trained to see yourself through a lens that was never meant to honor you. That's the damage this behavior leaves behind, quiet, persistent, and deeply destabilizing. This is where all of it leads if nothing changes. After enough time in these dynamics, something inside you shifts. Quietly, almost invisibly. You start overgiving. Not because you're generous, but because you're afraid. Afraid that if you stop trying, if you stop proving, if you stop accommodating, she'll leave. You begin to tolerate things you never imagined you would. You rationalize behavior that once would have crossed a line. And slowly, you start feeling lucky just to still be there. That feeling is the final signal. Because when a man feels lucky to be chosen, instead of confident in his own worth, the power has already moved. He starts centering his decisions around keeping her instead of honoring himself. His time, his effort, his emotional energy become bargaining chips. And the more he gives, the less leverage he has. Here's the part that's difficult to accept, but necessary to hear. She stays not because she values you. She stays because the structure benefits her. She gets attention without accountability, support without consistency, loyalty without having to reciprocate it at the same level. As long as you don't leave, as long as you keep absorbing discomfort, the dynamic continues to work. For her. This doesn't make her cruel. It makes her human. People don't give up advantageous positions on their own. They give them up when the structure changes. And the structure only changes when the man inside it stops abandoning himself to keep someone else comfortable. This is where responsibility matters, but not in the way most men think. You don't need to shame yourself. You don't need to replay every mistake. You don't need to become bitter or hardened. But you do need to be honest about what you've been participating in. Not because you caused it alone, but because you're the only one who can end it. Women don't stay out of pity. They don't stay out of loyalty to a man who no longer respects himself. They stay because the relationship allows them to. Because nothing is being required of them emotionally, behaviorally, or energetically. The moment you stop begging to be valued through effort, tolerance, or silence, the entire equation shifts. Some women rise to meet that standard. Others fall away. And both outcomes tell you the truth. This isn't about walking away dramatically. It's about standing still long enough to reclaim your center. To remember that being chosen is not the prize. Being respected is. And until that becomes non-negotiable, no list of behaviors will save you, because the pattern will simply repeat with a different face. If you step back and look at the pattern clearly, everything connects. The talking down, the flirting in front of you, the disappearing act when she doesn't need anything, the public jokes at your expense, the constant comparisons, 5 behaviors, 1 underlying dynamic. A slow erosion of self-respect that teaches her, quietly, consistently, that you will stay even when you are not valued. This is the part that matters most. You were never weak. You weren't foolish. And you weren't wrong for caring. You simply didn't see the structure clearly while you were inside it. And when a man can't see the structure, he keeps trying to fix the symptoms instead of changing the dynamic. You don't need to be chosen. You don't need to compete. You don't need to earn basic respect. What you need is clarity. Because the moment you stop negotiating your worth through effort, tolerance, or silence, you take your power back. And when that happens, one of two things will occur. Either the relationship recalibrates because respect becomes required again, or it reveals that it was never built on value to begin with. Both outcomes serve you. If this video helped you see something you've been avoiding, make sure you subscribe. This channel exists to bring clarity where confusion keeps men stuck. Like the video if any part of this hit closer than you expected. And if you recognized yourself in these patterns, leave a comment. Naming the truth is often the first step to stepping out of it. Remember this, and don't forget it. The moment you stop begging to be valued is the moment everything changes.